Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In this lesson we're going to be covering blocks because last video we covered strikes. In this video I'm going to be covering the types of blocks that you would find with a single saber or pretty much any style of weapon in lightsaber combat. Okay. Just to quickly recap on last video, I talked about the zones of attack. Obviously I talked about zone 1, which is the head strikes, you know, that downward head strike. Zone 2, which was the right arm, so if you were my opponent it would be a strike to your right side. Zone 3 is the opposite of that left strike, so your left arm. Zone 4 was pretty much center of the chest, anywhere in the center of the torso. Like I said, that's more stab techniques or impaling techniques. It could also come from a strike to the back through the torso. That could be a zone 4 strike. Zone 5 was the right leg, which you would find more diagonal strikes. Okay, usually coming around the head and down towards that right leg. And obviously zone 6 is the opposite of that. So zone 5. Zone 6 would be to the left leg. Okay, like that. So in this video I'm going to cover the types of blocks that you can obviously block those attacks with. I'll start with zone 1, and I'll quickly say that there's actually 2 types of blocks in lightsaber combat, or pretty much any kind of combat. The first is just your basic block, which is, you know, let's say someone's coming for a strike, like a zone 3 strike. Obviously there's just the basic block, okay? Saber to saber. That's the first type of block. The second type of block is more what's called a parry. It's actually a deflection as opposed to blade against blade, okay? But I'll cover that more in a little bit. So again, starting with zone 1, which is that downward overhead strike. Obviously, a lot of people are going to know this block. It's just an over the head block. So saber's coming over, it's going to block over the head, okay? Zone 2, that strike from the right side. There's 2 forms of that. There's just the simple, you know, blade pointing up to the side, okay? That's going to block a zone 2 strike. Opposite of that would be zone 3, okay? So zone 2 for the right side, zone 3 block for the left side. And the variants of those would be like this, like an inverted block, okay? These are not typical blocks themselves. These are more deflection blocks used for counterattack, but again I'll get into that in a little bit. Zone 5, strike to the right leg, would be similar to an inverted zone 2 strike, but it's going downwards now. You can do that either one-handed, two-handed, okay? I will say these blocks are typically done two-handed just because you get more strength with them. There's more chance of you actually stopping the attack coming, as opposed to like if someone's coming for a zone 1 attack and I just try to block one-handed, I'm losing essentially half my strength, and the blade could come, my saber could actually come and hit me because I'm losing that leverage from that other hand in that block, okay? So typically these blocks you will be wanting to do them two-handed, okay? So that was the zone 5 block, and obviously the opposite of that is a zone 6 block, okay? So that's just your basic blocks. Again, we have 1, which also can be done the other way. That's a zone 1 block, zone 2, 3, 5, and 6. Now I didn't cover zone 4 because zone 4, that block will actually depend on the kind of strike it is. Like I just said, one form of a zone 4 strike can actually be a strike to the back through the midsection. And one block for that would be just an inverted, almost like you're going to strike someone on the top of the head. It's actually a block like this, where you're keeping your saber pretty much going down your spine. And that would block, you know, a strike to the back, okay? The other type of zone 4 strike is an impale through the midsection, okay? And the best way to avoid that is either sidestep, so it goes past you, Or there's what's called a circular block or a rotational block. And what that is, let's say you're attacking me straight to the chest through zone 4. It's actually a rotational block. So if you can think, again, this is much harder to explain just by myself. If there was someone else, I could much easily show you this. But if you're striking right through my midsection, okay, all you're doing is you're taking the tip of your saber and drawing a circle around that blade, around the opponent's blade, okay? What that's going to do is it's going to take that blade and redirect it to the side. Or you could obviously do it the other way as well. All you're doing is you're taking their blade and you're redirecting it to the side. So if you can think of your blade coming towards mine, I'm redirecting it away from the midsection, okay? So those are your zone 4 blocks. Again, that's more of a deflection based block instead of an actual, blade to blade block. So those would be the actual just standard blocks, blade against blade blocks. Now, like I said, there's two types of blocks. The second would be that deflection based, or what's called a parry block, okay? So that's more used for if your opponent is stronger than you, and if you go for a straight block, they can easily overpower you. Deflection blocks are more finesse. You obviously commonly see these in fencing, and they're very good for weaker opponents. Instead of blocking a blade, you're redirecting it, okay? This is also good for opening up openings on the opponent for you to attack or counterattack, okay? So, starting with the zone 1, obviously that overhead strike, rather than go for just the standard blade against blade block, there's actually a couple things you can do to redirect that strike. One of which would be sidestepping, and you're going to the same position that you would for a blade to blade block, but this time you're letting it slide down your blade as you come in for a strike, okay? So if you're coming in for an overhead strike, I'm sidestepping and angling my blade so your blade slides down mine. And what that's going to do is it's going to create an opening on your right side. So if I was the one going for that strike and you did that deflecting block, my blade would essentially be sliding this direction, which creates a massive opening on my right side. Okay, so for that block, again, you're sidestepping and you're letting the blade slide down this one and then coming in for a strike to the opening, okay? So that's what I mean by a deflection block. It's creating, not only is it blocking the attack, but it's also creating an opening for a strike, for your own strike, okay? Similar one for a zone 2 attack, okay? Obviously you can do that straight blade against blade block, or you can do that inverted block. It's okay, so the strike comes in, it meets your blade, you can then carry that around for another strike, okay? Because what that's doing is it's taking that opponent's blade and essentially almost pulling it forward, okay? So if I was going for that zone 2 strike and you did that maneuver, it would essentially take my blade off course a little bit, again creating an opening, okay? So block, deflect, strike, okay? You'll see this a lot used in combinations and counterattacks. A lot of people, instead of going for that straight blade to blade block, they'll actually use deflection blocks to create openings for strikes. This is really good for choreography because it keeps the pace moving. It's not, block, strike, block, strike, block, strike. It leads for very fast-paced blocking, okay, and strikes. Again, the same can be used for zone 5 and zone 6. So if someone was coming for a zone 6 strike, again, you could, instead of meeting that blade saber to saber, you can deflect and strike, okay? The way I did that, that's for a zone 6 strike. Instead of coming blade to blade, this is your classic zone 6 block. okay? Instead of inverting my hands like this, I'm coming the other direction and pulling their blade around so I can create an opening, okay? So that's the two types of blocks there is. Obviously you have your standard blocks, and again, like I said, you can do those blocks one-handed. However, you're losing a lot of leverage with that second hand if you're only doing it one-handed, okay? So typically if you're going to block any strike, you typically want to be doing it one-handed, or I'm sorry, two-handed. Now if you move a lot, if you're very mobile, then you can get away with doing it one-handed, but you have to be quicker, okay? So again, just a quick recap for the basic zone blocks. You have one, which can be either way, however you want to do it. You have zone 2, zone 3. 4 is either a block for a strike to the back, or that rotational block, zone 5, and zone 6. That's your basic blocks. Now, again, you can do those deflection blocks, okay? Usually deflection blocks for your upper body will come around the head because you're taking advantage of that deflection and carrying that momentum around for a strike. Again, you can do the same with the leg blocks. Okay, so those are the more deflection-based blocks. Quickly, I will throw in one counter you can do for a zone 4 for a impaling, because a lot of people, they don't know what to do if, you know, a saber comes directly at them. Obviously, like I said, you can sidestep and do kind of the same deflection that you would for a zone 2 or 3. So if you're my opponent and I'm going for that impale, one block you could do is sidestep, deflect, and then come around for a strike. Another thing you can do is you can take that redirect, that basic zone 4 redirect, you can redirect and then come in for your own impale. Okay, so if you're attacking my midsection directly on, I can redirect that, which takes your blade off course, and I've now created my own opening for my own impale, okay? So that's your basic blocks to go with your basic strikes. In the next video I'll get into the various ways you can actually attack an opponent. I know I covered the various strikes, but in the next video I'm going to take those strikes and show you how to apply them in 4 different ways. I may have said 5, there's actually 4. So I'll see you in that video. It's going to be a fun one. Stay tuned.